Hello, and welcome to Wright Virtual Visits, the monthly online program that brings you to Frank Lloyd Wright designed sites and spaces that are publicly accessible and that we ultimately hope you will visit in person. Today, we are visiting Fallingwater in Mill Run, PA. My Pennsylvania neighbors. I'm Anna Kaplan, Executive Director of Graycliff in Derby, New York. And this is Fallingwater is a very special place. And today we'll be getting to poke around a couple of spaces that aren't included in a usual guided tour. As always, please feel free to leave your comments and questions in the chat and on Facebook, and we'll do our very best to include them in the program. Apologies for any sort of spam that you may have had to wade through to get here today. We're not sure what's going on. So before we begin our program, I would like to thank Eric Rogers, Events and Communications Manager with the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy, who is my partner on this project and behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly today. And also Forever Ready Productions, who have added a layer of polish to Wright Virtual Visits and allow everything to move smoothly. Today we have Scott Reedy behind the scenes. Thank you very much, Scott. I'd also like to thank Rich Beckermeyer, who's Marketing and Communications Specialist at Fallingwater, who did a lot of work to organize today's episode. Amy Humbert, School Programs and Outreach Manager at Fallingwater, is leading our virtual visit today. I should mention that this episode is not going to include a live video, and there are some excellent reasons for that. Firstly, this is a very busy time of year for Fallingwater, and we did not want to disrupt the visitor experience, both the in-person visitors to their site and you at home, by filming live. And what the pre-filmed video will also allow for is a more pure and pristine experience of this unique space that Amy will be telling us about today. And we'll be able to get closer to what the Kaufman's experience would have been. So it's pretty exciting. Amy, I'll now pass it along to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Anna. My name is Amy Humbert. As she said, I am the School Programs and Outreach Manager here at Fallingwater. And today we are going to take a look at one of the very special places in the house, which is the hatch on the first floor and the stairs that drop down to the stream. To begin, we have some great drone footage that we're going to be showing, and I will start by just kind of reviewing background history, and we will take a look at the exterior drone footage and then move inside the space and take a look at the first floor. So if you would like to go ahead and cue the footage up, we can go ahead and start playing that. So Fallingwater was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright in 1935. It was designed as a vacation home, an escape from Pittsburgh, which was a smoky city at that time with all of the steel mills going. And it was designed for the Edgar J. Kaufman family of Pittsburgh, which included Lillian Kaufman and also their son, Edgar Kaufman Jr., who had actually spent roughly about 6 months at Wright's School of Architecture, Taliesin in Wisconsin. So at this time, we're actually going in through the main entrance to Fallingwater. When you come into the building, there is a foyer that is 3 steps down, and then you step up onto the first floor, entering the building really actually on an angle. So you're coming in on the corner of the room. And that really makes the space dramatically open up in front of you. The first floor, including the 2 exterior balconies, is roughly about 1,800 square feet, laid out in an open plan design. It is a combination living room, study, dining room space. It allowed a lot of open floor area for the Kaufmans to be able to dance or play games and entertain their guests, which was something they enjoyed doing very much. It's a fireplace located very much in the heart of the building. You can see there's a large section of stone that comes up through the floor just a little bit. That is actually part of the site. The stone boulder protrudes up through the living room floor, just a little bit above the rest of the flagstone floor. But we're going to walk over to where Wright made a very direct connection with the stream. The Kaufman family loved that stream. It's called Bear Run. It's maybe 4.5, 5 miles long, and it's a stream that eventually does flow into a nearby river, the Youghiogheny. There's a waterfall about 15 feet tall, midway down, and the Kaufman family had anticipated having a house near the falls, but not necessarily on them. So they were somewhat surprised by Wright's initial suggestion of placing the house on the falls. However, they quickly came around to that idea, and they liked the idea of living with the waterfall as opposed to just looking at it. The first floor, we'll walk over to that hatch in just a moment, but kind of giving you an opportunity to look a little bit more closely at some of the furnishings that Wright designed for the building. He designed all of the built-in furnishings, but many freestanding pieces too, like coffee tables and small hassocks, low seating. The Kaufman family did add some of the freestanding chairs that you'll see. There's an armchair here by the large partner's desk that the Kaufmans added. But we're getting a sense now of where there's a set of windows. We do refer to this as the hatch because it is very much like a hatch on a ship. Essentially, that's how it functions. And dropping down beneath that hatch is a set of stairs that connect the building physically with the water below. Wright felt this was an important element of the construction. It visually tied the building and the stream together. For the Kaufmans, it also allowed direct access to the water. So the stairs that hatch, are framed with steel, and the windows on the top section, you can see I'm opening two small doors. The windows on top slide back one under the next very smoothly, I might add, too. This whole system kind of rests basically like in a track on ball bearings, and you can push it with one finger. Each window goes back under the next, all the way back under a planter at the very back. And so at this point, we're going to actually walk down to where the stairs are. There is a section that is just a foot or so above the water, and that's where I'll be standing, that platform that you just saw. There were two glass blocks covering lights. So kind of think about going down those stairs and what that must have been like to sit down there, put your feet in the stream, just kind of relax, maybe have a glass of wine. The waterfall drops off behind where the staircase is. You can actually see the edge of the falls here through the stairs, but I will also kind of pull the camera out around the edge of the staircase here in a moment so you can see the waterfall a little bit better. But we are fairly close to the edge of the falls. And the waterfall, again, is roughly about 15 feet tall. So it is shallow when you come down the stairs. It's not, I mean, you could wade there at times if it had not been an extremely heavy rain and the stream was shallow like it is when I was filming. Certainly they could have waded there a little bit, but it's not a place that you could go down and actually swim there at the bottom. It's not deep enough. It's too shallow. But it's also having that hatch a way to allow some cool air up into the first floor. You can push the windows back, roll them back. There are screens that can be placed in the track, and you can completely screen that area in so that, to keep the insects out. When I filmed this, there was not water in the pool there on the left. That is a separate pool. It is accessed not from wading through the stream, but there is actually a staircase that comes down into it. It's a small pool, maybe 4.5 feet deep. It was intended as a plunge pool. Plunge pools were to have a lot of health benefits. They were filled with cold water. So it wasn't intended so much that you would maybe jump in there and do laps, but you would plunge into that cool water, and it would boost circulation and help with cut down on inflammation and things. And just giving you a chance to kind of see how the stairs drop down. There's an open area above, and then we'll be facing again, as I look forward, we are facing the bridge that you walk across as you first come down to Fallingwater. And it was early in the season when this was filmed, so we did not have water in the plunge pool yet, but typically, like I said, that would be about 4.5 feet deep. And then looking back up into the first floor where the stairs drop down. When this staircase was designed, it did hang out of the first floor. It did not have any supports that connected it to the stream bed. However, there was at least 2 floods in the mid-1950s, and the staircase was damaged and had to be rebuilt. At that time, Edgar Kaufman Jr. suggested that it would be a good idea to actually connect the stairs and support them better. So that small platform I was standing on, the last 2 sections of steel actually go through the platform and into the stream bed. So it's not truly a hanging staircase at this point. If you have questions and would like to type them into the chat, I would be happy to answer any of those. We certainly want to address any questions that you might have about Fallingwater, about the hatch or the stairs, or about its history.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. That was incredible. I've been to Fallingwater a few times, and I can't remember, is that the only space that allows direct access to the water in that way, or is there another opportunity in the structure?
There are really just the 2 areas, the stairs
Mhm,
that connect to the living room down with the stream,
mhm,
or if you walk out onto what's called the East Terrace, which is over on the kind of, if you're standing on the bridge looking across the building, it's the terrace that you would see from that side. But that terrace has steps leading down into the plunge pool.
right.
So it's not taking you necessarily right to the stream, but it does let you access a small pool. And those are the two places.
I love the opportunity to see you opening up the hatch, and how smooth that was, and it's not readily understandable how that opens. So seeing you do that was really was great.
And actually, the hatch wasn't in perfect working condition even when I first started, which was back in 1986. But in 1990, we had a firm come in that does steel restoration. It was actually Sea Kircher Steel Restoration Company from New York, and they did a lot of work on the hatch. And some of the panes, some of the steel was frozen, and they needed to strip all of the paint off, remove any rust, and get everything working again. And so it does move very smoothly. I've pushed it back with one finger, actually.
That's amazing. Someone had a question about the screens for the hatch. Uh,
Okay.
where are they stored, and are they original?
When I first began working, we did actually have the screens in the hatch, and they fit just in a little track right under the windows themselves
Right.
and open very similarly. They go back in layers and go back one under the next. But after I'm thinking it was after the initial restoration in 1990, there we decided to remove the screens. The hatch has dipped down just a little bit. It's not quite perfectly level, and because of that, it was putting the frames of the hatch were putting some pressure on the screens. And they weren't sliding, they weren't working quite properly. So they have been removed. They're not in place. They haven't been for quite some time. So they're actually stored in our collection storage building on the site. But initially, it was designed that you could close that in completely with screens.
That makes sense. There's a bunch more questions coming in actually. When you were panning, we saw the bridge and it looked like there was a little damage to the
Mhm.
exterior. Is that something that's scheduled for restoration at some point?
Actually, it has been restored since that video was done. So what you were seeing was a section of stucco that
Mhm.
had come loose. Fallingwater is a house that is reinforced concrete with a stucco layer over it in a freeze thaw environment. So that stucco kind of moves a little bit with temperature changes. Cracks can open up, and if you get a crack, then water can penetrate and cause the stucco to pop off. So we actually have the bridge section. We took the walls of the bridge completely down to just the deck. We removed the walls, poured new concrete walls, and put new stucco on top. So the bridge has been completely restored. But maintaining the stucco on the house, that's something that takes a lot of work, and it's there's different sections of the building that we work on constantly.
Mhm. Yes, I'm sure. Um, there was a question about cold air coming up from the hatch into the house, especially during the winter. And I understand that the Kaufmans were there during the colder months as well. Is that accurate? Um,
Certainly when it was first built, I think maybe in the 40s and 50s, as they got a little bit older, they started having a lot of issues with arthritis, particularly Mr. Kaufman did. He'd had a fall from a horse at one time and had some back issues. So they began spending a lot of their time in the winter either in Florida or in Palm Springs, California, where they would later build a vacation home by Richard Neutra.
yes.
And in terms of the hatch, and people are trying to visualize how well it seals, it
Mhm.
does seal tightly. However, our windows, which are all steel frame, and our doors are not, they don't have a rubber gasket around them. If they are, if a steel window is maintained properly and you don't have rust building up, you can get a fairly tight seal with them. Um, but it's also a house with single pane glass. We don't have double pane glass, so we do lose, a lot of heat just through our glass itself. I don't in standing next to that hatch in the winter, I don't necessarily feel a lot of draft coming in around where the windows close, though. It seals pretty tightly.
And there are several fireplaces, correct?
Yes, we have I should know that off the top of my head. Uh, 4 fireplaces in the house. The biggest one is what's on the first floor, and then every bedroom but one has a fireplace. Plus there's central heat too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so before we move on to the next portion and what you're going to be sharing with us, I have one last question um, that I think is really interesting, which is, could you just talk briefly about when Fallingwater became a public site and what that process was like?
Sure. So, I believe Edgar Kaufman Sr. and Edgar Kaufman Jr. had talked about the future plans for Fallingwater, at different points. And they realized that they were very fortunate and could afford to build Fallingwater and enjoy a house that, really connected you with nature and showed how architecture and nature could work together. But not everybody was in that same position. And when Edgar and Lillian died in the early 1950s, the house did, of course, go to Edgar Kaufman Jr. He was living in New York, working for the Museum of Modern Art as curator and then director of the Industrial Design Collection. And he did use Fallingwater for a period of, it's like 6 or 7 years as a vacation home. But ultimately, he decided that he would like to open the building to the public. And I think he made the decision to do so while he was still living so he could serve as an advisor, because he had some really definite ideas about how he wanted people to see and experience this house. So he entrusted Fallingwater to basically a private nature conservancy. We are the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. We're a land conservation group. Fallingwater is a unique property for us. We're not really in the business of maintaining house museums. However, he wanted an organization that was going to care every bit as much about the land and the stream as they did the house and the collections. So Fallingwater was entrusted to the Conservancy in October of 1963, and the tour program began the following spring, 1964. And people often wondered, did Edgar Kaufman Jr. use the building after he entrusted it to the Conservancy? And the answer is no. He felt the building had a different role at that point, that it had a different life. And so it's been a public site since 1964.
And is it true that when it was donated, it wasn't just the building, but it was furnished and had decorative objects?
Yes, Edgar Kaufman Jr. entrusted the house very much as it was when his parents used it. So our complete collection of Frank Lloyd Wright furniture was entrusted to the Conservancy, and also the house's collections. The furnishings and the art collection became permanent part of the Fallingwater estate in the mid 1980s. I think in 85, I think Edgar Jr. made that official donation. As far as the land goes, that was entrusted too. The Kaufmans owned roughly 2,000 acres, and the Conservancy has continued to purchase more land so we can maintain the stream, and we now have, it's around 5,000 acres that we protect.
Wow, what an incredible set of circumstances.
Yeah, we're really fortunate. The house looks today very much as it would have when the Kaufmans were using it. Certainly a lot of Edgar Jr.'s eye as well as a curator and advisor over those years. He died in 1989. He was 79, so he was with us for a number of years.
Well, Amy, before we wrap up, why don't you share with us about the Fallingwater Institute?
Sure. We have some still images. You're welcome to go ahead and show those, and I can talk a little bit about Fallingwater Institute. When Edgar Kaufman Jr. entrusted Fallingwater to the Conservancy, he had a vision that Fallingwater could really serve as a place of inspiration for artists, for scholars, for everyday people. And he had hoped at some point that we might have perhaps residencies on the site, artists in residence, scholar in residence. And in the mid 1960s, the first artist in residence, Roger Torrey Peterson, who has many of people know for the field guides that he has created. He's an illustrator. So he had a brief residency here in the mid 1960s. And then for various reasons, we did not have another residency on site until the early 2000s. And in 2015, formally established what's referred to as Fallingwater Institute. And much of our education program falls under that. So the Fallingwater Institute would be the umbrella that immersive classes such as photography workshops by Andrew Peelage fall under the Fallingwater Institute, or workshops that we might have on site, or actual residencies. And we have residency programs for high school students, for college students, adults. You're seeing actual some footage now of where people stay and where the studio is, which is just, oh, maybe a mile or two on the Fallingwater campus, but not, it's removed from the building. It's not something that you can see, but it is close enough that people, when they are staying at, using the studio or staying at the High Meadow building, they can actually walk down to Fallingwater. So we have housing there that can accommodate, oh, I think it's 15 or 16 people. I haven't counted that out for a little while. But you're also seeing footage now of the studio, which is adjacent to the High Meadow building. And the studio is a wonderful place that, you know, students can actually go and work on drafting and or various other types of classes. And it has a large wood shop adjacent to it as well. So it's very well equipped. And these are some of our students using the site. And actually, this is right down from the High Meadow building itself. Usually the high school students have one night where they have like a campfire on the property. So, and then some of the students, one of the projects that a number of our college students design is, or actually work on, is designing a chair that must be strong enough to be functional. So they have to be able to sit in it. And they draw from a bag of a number of adjectives, and the design of their chair has to illustrate somehow the adjectives that they don't get to pick. They just have to draw blindly out. And I believe this might be one of our Chatham groups, Chatham in Pittsburgh, Chatham University. And you can see a little bit of High Meadow there in the background. High Meadow started out as a 1960s split level house. And around, I think it was 2015, we had an addition added onto it, much of which you can see behind the students in the photo. You can see some of the area that's lit up. That's actually the addition itself, and that was designed by Bolin, Zawinski and Jackson, the architectural firm. We've also done watercolor workshops on the property as well by the artist Ron Donahue, and this is him with some of the students on painting at the View, which is where many of the famous photographs of Fallingwater are taken from. It's just downstream from the building.
Thank you, Amy. That's a layer to the organization that I'm not sure many people know about. So that was really interesting to see those photos and learn about, Fallingwater Institute. For those that want to visit, and take a guided tour of Fallingwater, tell us about how you go about doing that.
Sure. So you can purchase tickets on our website, which is fallingwater.org. I would suggest looking 3 weeks to a month in advance at a minimum, because since COVID, we actually have made kind of a unique decision to kind of cut our visitation somewhat to improve the overall visitor experience. We used to launch groups of 14 people every 6 minutes. It's now groups of 12, which doesn't sound like a big difference, but it is, every 10 minutes. And the guide now meets you at the visitor center. So the big change is that had you been here pre-COVID, there would have been 3 groups of 14 in the living room, a group in every room in the house. Now, when you go on a tour, you see one other tour group the entire time. It's very much like being in the house, you get a much better sense of what it was like to be in the house without a ton of people around. It's wonderful. It's greatly improved the visitor experience overall. So
That's
tickets can
wonderful.
be, oh, I'm sorry, tickets can be purchased directly off the website, or our phone number is also on our website that if you want to purchase them over the phone, but they must be purchased in advance, and it's very difficult to get them last minute because
Mhm.
our visitation is much smaller than it used to be.
And especially during the fall months, correct? When people are leaf
Yes. Yeah.
blowing. Would you say that's your busiest year?
October, yes, October
Mhm.
is one of our busiest times, but because we've cut the visitation somewhat, we sell out almost every single day. So while in the past you might have been able to show up without a reservation and easily get added to a tour, that's not so much the case now. So you really have to plan ahead a little bit.
Good to know, and it's well worth planning ahead. Um, could you tell us about this party that you have coming up that I'm sure everyone's interested to hear about?
Sure. So we have an event called the Fallingwater Soiree, which is later in August. And I actually don't have the date of it right in front of me, so I'll have to get that here in just a moment. But it is a chance to see what Fallingwater was like in the evening and see the house lit up at night. So it is a catered event. People come. There are invited to walk down to the house. There are hors d'oeuvres and usually music at the house, followed by dessert at the visitor center. So the house is open for several hours there in the evening, and it is. Thank you, Rich. August 12th is when the soiree is scheduled for. And it's a limited amount of tickets. So we're not just, so, if you are interested in coming to the soiree, I would say take a look at our website now, because the ticketing for that is small to keep the event more intimate. But again, live music throughout the house, hors d'oeuvres, and drinks outside on the bridge.
And what an incredible opportunity to experience those lights that are, part of that hatch space that you showed us. Activating that space during the evening. I was thinking about that as you were walking down there, and you could see the lights in the floor. It must be an incredible experience to see that in action. During the.
Absolutely. We don't have lights that shine onto the building. So when you see Fallingwater at night, you're seeing the house glowing through from the inside out through the windows. And Edgar Kaufman Jr. once described the building as looking like a lantern in the darkness, which I think it very much does.
That's amazing. So yeah, go out there and get those tickets to the Fallingwater Soiree while they're still available. Well, Amy, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
You are quite welcome. Thank you for having us.
Before we wrap up our show today, I wanted to plug a couple of upcoming events. Firstly, on June 20th, there is a virtual event that we will be sure to post on our Facebook page. It is being hosted by the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy, and it involves Scott Perkins, who is the Senior Director of Preservation and Collections at Fallingwater, and he will be giving a talk about the preservation and restoration challenges at Fallingwater. So this is an excellent opportunity to dig deeper. And I'm sure he'll be discussing maybe that recent stucco restoration that Amy discussed today. Also, our next episode of Wright Virtual Visits is July 13th. So, same time, same place. This is a very special episode as it will focus on UNESCO World Heritage sites. We're going to welcome back Heidi Ruley, the executive director of Unity Temple Restoration Foundation, for this episode as our host. And we'll be learning about each of the 8 Wright sites that are among 24 sites in the United States that have been designated by UNESCO on the World Heritage List. These 8 major works, of which Fallingwater is one, are located across the country and span 50 years of Wright's 70-year career. So be sure to tune in next month for this extra special episode. And thank you, everyone. And we will see you soon.